गुड आफ्टरनून क्लास। आज हम लोग स्टार्ट करेंगे कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल, क्योंकि बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चैप्टर है ये कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल। कुछ पॉइंट्स हम लोग लिखना स्टार्ट करेंगे विदाउट वेस्टिंग टाइम। कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल। Cost of capital cost of capital may be defined according to the following two concepts. Cost of capital may be defined according to the following two concepts. Point number A, under operational concept, and B, under economic concept. B is under economic concept. अब नीचे लिखिएगा, according to operational concept, comma, it is defined as the minimum rate of return. It is defined as the minimum rate of return. Underline कीजिएगा minimum rate of return को. Minimum rate of return which a firm must earn. On its investment. That is, it refers to the discount rate. That is, it refers to the discount rate which is used while determining the present value of estimated future cash flows. Full stop. But under economic terms, comma, there are two formulations. हाइफन दे दीजिए, नीचे लिखिएगा फर्स्ट कॉमा, it is the cost of raising funds. Sir, क्लास हो गया, settle down. First, this is the cost of raising funds required in order to finance it is the borrowing rate of the firm. It is the borrowing rate of the firm. Full stop. Point number 2. Yes, secondly, it refers to the opportunity cost. It refers to the opportunity cost of the funds in terms of lending rates. In terms of lending rates. In terms of lending rates, that is the expected earnings by investing funds outside. Full stop. Here, comma, paragraph change, here, comma, here, 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 comma, cost of capital is used as a borrowing rate, since it is impracticable on the part of the firm which is going to take any capital budgeting decision, full stop. अब नीचे सामा के करके लिखेगा under economic term concept या under economic concept the term cost of capital is defined as the weighted average cost of capital, the weighted average cost of capital, full stop. एक बार पढ़िए इसको जो लिखे हैं Switch off the AC and restart it. Must have been closed with remote. That is why it is not functional. It requires remote. Close it. It's a waste of electricity. Right, have you gone through? The term cost of capital. Prior to understanding the concept of cost of capital, we must understand as to why we require cost of capital. Why it is so imperative? Because if you are planning to invest, what is more important is that you must have sufficient amount of resources from where you can invest. Sufficient amount of resources. Now the question is, you require these resources. It's fine if you own it, but sometimes you need to borrow also. Sometimes you need to borrow. But irrespective of the fact whether you own it or you need to borrow it, all the funds are to be invested in the proposed project. All the funds are to be invested in the proposed project. Now, when you are trying to understand as to what cost of capital actually is, this definition of cost of capital can be explained in two contexts. In how many contexts? Two contexts. One is cost of capital as an operating concept, and the second one is cost of capital in terms of economic concept. Now, what is cost of capital as operating concept? As operating concept. In the previous chapter, we have discussed in depth how we convert the future cash inflows into their present value. We require a rate of discounting. We require a rate of discounting. The rate at which the estimated cash flows, be it inflow or outflow, get converted into their present value. That rate of discounting is known as cost of capital. Under which approach? Under operating, under operational approach. Now, point number two. It says cost of capital as economic concept. In this, we take two aspects of cost of capital. How many aspects? Two aspects. One, how much do we need to earn? That is, if I borrowed money, for this borrowing I'm supposed to pay an annualized interest rate of 8%, and I'm planning to invest in a project, I must earn at least 8% that invest, or even more than that. So this is known as cost of capital, economic form. In economic, how much you expect to earn on your investments, or in other words, the market. At what rate you have borrowed it from the market, or at what rate you have been lent the money by the financial institution. Right? That opportunity cost. That opportunity cost. Say, for example, if I have some financial resources with me and I've invested in project A and I've invested in project B, couldn't I have invested in project B out of the same financial resources? Why? I could have. I could have. My question is, couldn't I have invested in project B? I could have. मैं कर सकता था. Right? But I chose project B. There must be some specific reason behind it. There must be some specific reason behind it. What is that reason? The reason is that project A is giving me better return on my investments in respect to project B. That is why I chose project B. Right? The cost of capital in its economic term may also be referred to as the opportunity lost. As the opportunity lost. Had I not invested in the present project, what would have been the next best alternative or the next best project from where I could have earned something? Right? So these are three different ways in which you can explain the term cost of capital. And cost of capital is ultimately associated with the capital structure. With the capital structure. Now, what is capital structure? Capital structure is a mix of debt and equity. It's a mix of debt and equity. Now, when I say it's a mix of debt and equity, the proportion of mix may be different. Sometimes you have equal weights on equity and equal weights on debt. Sometimes you may have excessive weights on equity and lesser weights on debt. And the case might be opposite also. You might have excessive of debt in your capital structure and a very little bit of equity contribution in the capital structure. Right, class? Now, why I am associating this cost of capital with capital structure? That there must be some specific reason behind it. What is the reason? Why have we built a capital structure? A capital structure has been built because I want to invest in a project, and from there on, I want to make some profits. And from there on, I want to make some profits. And how will I be making more profits? I will be making more profits when I am lowering or when I am cutting upon my costs. Right? When I am cutting upon my costs or raising the price or reducing the expense. Cutting upon the cost is also known as reducing the expense. So would I be interested in raising capital at a higher cost or at a lower cost? Would I be interested in raising funds at a higher cost or at a lower cost? Lower cost, because funds at lower cost when raised will give you lesser expense, and lesser expense means your profit margins are going to increase. Right? The cost of capital. Now in this chapter, we are not concerned with the rate of discounting or the operational approach of cost of capital. Neither we are concerned with the opportunity lost aspect of the cost of capital. Rather, we are only focused upon the rate at which we have raised the finances for the proposed project. What did I say? In this chapter, We are neither concerned with the operational aspect of cost of capital, that is the rate of discounting, nor we are concerned of the funds invested. Rather, we are only concerned with the cost at which we have raised the finances for the proposed project. And in this regards, cost of what did I say? Weighted average cost. Or what is this weighted average cost of capital? In short, it is referred to as WACC, weighted average cost of capital. As I mentioned, that you might have different proportions of debts and equity in your capital structure, and debt and equity have different costs of capital. Debt and equity have different costs of capital. Equity is costlier, debt is cheaper. Equity is costlier and debt is cheaper. We need to calculate the weighted average. Why do we need to calculate the weighted average? Say, for example, if 3/4 of the capital structure is equity, 1/4 is debt. 1/4 is equity comes at a cost of 20%, debt comes at a cost of 8%. Debt comes at a cost of 8%, and equity comes at a cost of 20%. And the weight of equity is 3/4, and weight of debt is 1/4. It is obvious that as the weights differ, the costs also differ. The average weighted cost of the capital structure needs to be calculated. Getting the point, class? This is why we need to calculate the weighted average cost of capital. Why? Because the cost of raising different sources of finances may be different, and secondly, the proportion or the mix in the capital structure might also be different. The mix of the capital structure might also be different. Now, because of these two specific reasons, you need to calculate the weighted average cost of capital. How to calculate the weighted average cost of capital? Now, it's a part that we are supposed to study later on in this chapter. Clear, class? Yes. Now, go through what you have written once, and then I will come back and explain you the importance of cost of capital. Is it done, class? Now we shall be writing. Next topic is significance of the cost of capital. Significance of the cost of capital. Cost of capital is the most significant concept in capital budgeting decisions. Significant concept in capital budgeting decisions. Since it is used as a decision criteria. Full stop. Under DCF technique, D capital, C capital, F capital, under DCF technique, comma. If NPV method is followed, as a decision criterion, comma, the cost of capital is used as a discount rate. The cost of capital is used as a discount rate in evaluating the desirability of the projects. In evaluating the desirability of the projects, full stop. आगे लिखिएगा. Similarly, if IRR method is used, comma, the computed IRR is compared with the cost of capital. Compared with, similarly, if the IRR method is used, the computed IRR is compared with the cost of capital, and a project is accepted with the highest IRR over cost of capital. पैराग्राफ चेंज कीजिएगा. In short, it is referred to as the minimum required rate, referred to as the minimum required rate of return, comma, cutoff rate comma, hurdle or target rate, hurdle or target rate, comma, standard return, etc. आगे लिखिएगा. Under different capital budgeting techniques, under different capital budgeting techniques, the acceptance and rejection rules highlight the importance of the cost of capital. The importance of the cost of capital. देखिए ये जो पॉइंट हम लोगों ने लिखा है उस पॉइंट को एक बार पढ़िए तो शायद बहुत कुछ क्लियर होगा कि कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल क्यों इंपॉर्टेंट है. हर एक पॉइंट को लिखवाना संभव नहीं था, इसलिए जो जो इंपॉर्टेंट था केवल उसी को लिखवाया गया है. रेस्ट आई विल बी एक्सप्लेनिंग. क्या लिखा हम लोगों ने? कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल जो है, व्हाई इज इट इंपॉर्टेंट? दिस इज व्हाट वी आर ट्राइंग टू अंडरस्टैंड. व्हाई इज कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल सो इंपॉर्टेंट? As we have already seen that cost of capital can be used in two contexts. One is as operational concept and the second one is as economic concept. Cost of capital plays a very significant role in capital budgeting decisions. What I said, cost of capital plays a very significant role in the capital budgeting decisions. There are two different techniques of capital budgeting. One is non-discounting, wherein you have payback methods or payback period method. The other one is accounting rate of return, ARR method. And in case of discounting techniques, you have NPV, that is net present value, internal rate of return, IRR. Third one is profitability index, PI, in short it is referred to as, and finally you have YTM, yield to maturity. Now let us have a glance at different acceptance and rejection rules of these capital budgeting decisions. Glance ki Hindi pata hai? Jhalak. Right. So when we talk about NPV, based on NPV, when do you accept and when do you reject? If the NPV is positive, you accept the project. If it is negative, you reject. Now, if you are accepting a project, it means your NPV is positive. Your NPV is what? Positive. What it shows? It shows that your return on investment is more than your cost of capital. Right? How come NPV will be positive? NPV will be positive only when the summation of all the present value of future cash inflows is greater than the present value of cash outflow. So summation of the present value of all future cash inflows is nothing but what you are earning from the project, what you are expecting to earn from the project. And present value of all cash outflow is nothing but what you are planning to invest. If the NPV is positive, it means that you are earning more on your investments and hence you are expected to accept the project. Likewise, what is IRR? IRR is the rate at which the present value of all future cash inflows becomes equal to the present value of all cash outflows. Right? At this particular rate, both the values become equal. Now, what we wrote under IRR, how to accept and how to reject the project. If the IRR is more than the cost of capital or the required rate of return, only then you will be accepting the project. Only then you will be accepting the, otherwise you will outright reject it. And what I made you write down that you might have 7, 8, 9, 10 projects wherein you have IRR which is equal to your, which makes your present value of cash inflow equals to present value of cash outflow, right? So which of these IRR will be accepted? Lowest IRR? The answer is no. A project which has the highest IRR, that is the project which shows the maximum difference between IRR and the required rate of return. That project will be accepted, right? If a project is showing the difference of say 3%, IRR is 11%, required rate of return is 8%. And another project is showing that the IRR is 12.5% and the required rate of return is 8%. Which project will be accepted? First one or the latter one? Latter one. Why? Because the difference between IRR and required rate of return is more in the second project. Right? Get the point, class? So based on these aspects, you come to decide as to which project needs to be accepted and why it is going to be accepted. Therefore, cost of capital is very, very basic, not only in capital budgeting decision, but also in deciding or planning about the capital structure of a business. In planning about the capital structure of the business. Everybody wishes to have a capital structure which is having a lower cost of capital. Right? So it's enough for today. आज हम लोग class को end कर रहे हैं और next class carry करेंगे.